Great. So we can stay here, I think. Okay.
Yeah, we'll just
Should
share
we
the
start,
recording with you guys
or
once
should
you're
we
done.
wait for the others?
I think we can begin, so we don't have to waste Nico's time.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I prepared the first questions. First of all, thank you for having you and that you have time for us. It's very great from you. And my first question would be, what motivated you to become entrepreneur and especially to start Nava company?
Well, I started my first company when I was 12, so it was kind of natural for me somehow just to start companies and or kind of think that way. And Nava, in this case for us, I guess one of the discussions we had with my co-founder was that we had to invest about 20,000 euros in some molds and toolings in the beginning. And we were figuring out that, well, in Finland, the education is quite free, so this might be our, let's say, learning money that we're spending instead of paying for university. So it was kind of a learning trip for us, which ended up lasting 13 years or something for me in the end. And yeah, it's more about just doing what you want and trying to find someone who's willing to pay for what you're doing, kind of mentality, making work for yourself in the end instead of finding work. So yeah, that's kind of how I look at the world.
Yeah, great. And my second question would be, how do you continue to learn and develop personally as an entrepreneur?
How? Well, by reading a lot.
Okay.
Basically, reading and listening, everything you can. Nowadays, everything keeps changing so much that even though I'm an IT person and so on, it's hard to keep up with everything, and there's a lot of things happening. So, of course, my way of learning also is quite wide. I don't like to be kind of looking narrowly at one thing. I like to, like with Nava, for example, I was doing everything from coding, cloud code, or kind of embedded devices, but I was also doing the actual material research and biology research and microbiology and production and so on. So that's why learning nowadays is getting kind of easier with the AI. It's easier to take a kind of a dive into something you didn't know before and get some information immediately. So it's kind of making life easier. But at the same time, the speed of the world is increasing. So the speed at you have to learn is getting crazier and crazier every single day.
Okay, thank you. And my last question would be, how do you usually make important decisions or choices in your company? And do your personal traits or opinions influence these choices?
Especially in the startup, usually you don't have enough time to kind of properly evaluate every single decision. So there's a lot behind how you feel or how you think at that moment. The biggest problem is trying to figure out when do you need to stop and actually look at things versus when can you just operate. And of course, money is one good guideline. If it's some thousands of euros, then tens of thousands of euros, you might just do that thing, decide it immediately. If it's a few millions, well, okay, you might stop for a bit longer. But also there's the potential of damage as well, especially when you're dealing with, in my case, it's always something hardware related. So sometimes you just have to stop and think. We're just 2 weeks ago, we just had an actual fire at our new plant in my current job. And it's just things like that where you actually are doing something in the physical world. You have to make sure things are safe. So there's a lot of different variables you have to kind of consider for each decision in the end. But at the same time, you have to make so many decisions every day that there's no way to kind of for every decision to kind of think it through completely, but rather try to quickly see the potential bad impact or good impact, and then based on that decide how fast you can actually decide.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I pass the word to my colleague Ren.
You have mute on.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Hi, I'm Len Saito. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. I have two questions about opportunity identification. The first one is, how did you identify and choose this venture idea and opportunity?
For now, especially, we did some customer research. Kind of at that point, we were basically testing the product and doing the customer research at the same time, because it's such a new product that it's nearly impossible to make the customer research without having the product as well. And actually, my current company is kind of similar, where we basically Elementic, and we have the same situation where nobody will believe what you have until you're able to show it. So that's why currently we're building a factory to have pre-production going. So for really new product, that's kind of the only way. For IT products, it's a lot easier to kind of cheat and make a sample, for example, and show the customer, and then kind of start from as little as possible. But it really depends what kind of product you're dealing with.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, the second one is, were there any unexpected challenge or risk you encountered during the process?
Well, this is the other reason why in hardware you need to start with the product quite early, because there will always be a lot of those, a lot more than you think. Actually, usually so many that if you knew all of them in the beginning, you would never start. So the only thing you can kind of expect is that there's going to be a lot of unexpected things happening, and sometimes they're good, sometimes bad. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of unexpected things happening. And now, for example, anything from, as an early example, we were testing the products in our factory, and that factory was part of other building where they were humidifying the air. And when we delivered all of our products to customers, first customer, all of the products died within a week after delivery. The main reason was that the environment where we were testing was so different than from what the final location was. And we didn't realize that the testing environment affected that much. And things like these, where you can kind of test in your own laboratory for a certain amount of time, but then when you finally go to the customer or some other random thing happens, and then you realize, wait, I didn't test for that one. And then you learn something, and then you improve, and then you repeat. And at some point, you hopefully run out of learnings, at least for a single topic.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll pass the third one.
Hey, my name is Hamna Farooq. Thank you so much for your time. So I wanted to ask about, I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about, once you decided to build a business, what were the key steps you took to turn it into a proper business from idea to business? So what steps were involved?
For me, it's kind of almost hard to identify the steps, because it's just part of life in a way. You start from the idea that, okay, you have something you want to do and maybe make into a business, and then you start looking at, okay, how can I sell this? And then in between, there's anything from building a product to making sure you, let's say the company is formed and is running and all that, to, okay, having a website, having marketing materials, doing the product tests, all that. And in a way, it's just a long process of making everything happen. And startups are still tough, especially with the hardware products, because there's so much to do in a way. It's always a lot easier with IT stuff, because you can get going a lot faster. You don't have to build up production. You don't have to kind of do any kind of hardware designs and testing and so on. So when you're talking about a company like Nava, where you have a living product even with IoT components that have cloud components as well, there's so many parts that to get from start to kind of actually shipping a product is a lot of work and a lot of different kind of topics in a way. And that's why, for me, in a way, to say what are the steps, well, in a way, the steps are always individual for every company. It depends a lot, because in the end, you still need to do all the steps, but some of them will be a lot easier if you don't have hardware. Or if you're like a food delivery company, well, it's super easy. Just walk to a company, ask if you can deliver their food, and then have a website and start delivering. Like, it can be super easy, or you can make it super complicated and so on. But it's just there's a lot of kind of variance between different companies. The food delivery company is an example where I was involved in Jyväskylä before Volt and everything happened. There was Gastronautti, which was a bigger company from Turku, and they were expanding to Jyväskylä, for example. And it was super easy to start because they had all the IT infrastructure in place. So you literally just walk to a restaurant and ask, can we deliver? They say yes, and then it's on the website, and then you can start work. So it's a lot easier that way. So that's why there's no single way of doing things. And maybe last comment on this one is the University of Jyväskylä. There was this one older teacher there who was saying that the entrepreneurship should be actually moved under arts, because in a way in arts you never get the same result by doing the same steps, but in science, where the entrepreneurship right now is, you always get the same result after doing the same steps. But as we know, entrepreneurship never happens like that. It's basically an art form where you do the same steps and the end result will differ every single time.
That's nice. And can you give us an idea about how many people are working in your company and how many are customers that you have dealt with till today?
I'm actually not familiar with Nava because I left Nava about 2 years ago now. So when I left, there was somewhere around 30 to 40 people, I think, potentially 50, kind of depending how you calculate. There was people in 3 different countries, some subcontractors and so on. So quite a varying bunch in a way. And customers, actually, I have no idea. Hundreds something. But again, one customer can be one school, which has thousands of pupils. So the actual product will impact a lot of people. But if you're talking about the customer as someone who is signing the agreement, and in a way, for us, hundreds or thousands of customers in that company.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass then to my next peer.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Ola, and I really appreciate the fact that you made time out to do this with us. So straight into it, I was curious when you were talking that because you deal with hardware, I can already tell that what you do is capital intensive. You need a lot of money. So my curiosity is tending towards understanding your financial strategy, how you financed the venture at the beginning of the journey.
It depends a lot on the company in the end. With Nava, we started basically bootstrapping, making everything ourselves. And for the first 2 years, we were actually profitable. We didn't pay any salaries for ourselves, so that was possible. But anyways, that's the way we started. Then we knew we want to kind of grow fast, so we started going after venture capital and started talking with investors and so on, and kind of learning how the process goes. We had the theory from school, but let's just say the reality never works quite like you learned in school. And yeah, we started kind of finding financing and trying to kind of improve the production and have better capabilities to make better products and so on, cheaper products and so on. And that was kind of it was really kind of step by step on inside Nava, comparing to like the current company I'm part of. It's a slightly bigger scale in the end, because in the beginning we had a few 100,000 financing, and then beginning of this year we got about 10-15 million, which basically enables us to build a pilot plant, and the next jump will have to be somewhere in the range of 50 million to get to an actual production plant. And just to build the actual plant will take 1 to 2 years easily. So the time frames and kind of amount of money you have to waste until you actually see a finished product out coming from the other end and then actually able to sell to someone, it's crazy long timelines in the end. And for us also, the other part is getting the raw material, because similarly for the raw material suppliers, we need to buy all the raw material from a single pulp mill, for example, which means that they have to invest tens of millions to build their side of the production capability that we can then buy from them. So there's kind of crazy long timelines. And again, this is maybe a slightly more special case that we are dealing with right now. But just to give you the kind of extreme ends, I would say it can be with the hardware.
Wow, that's actually massive. So what I was, our focus actually has been on Nava Group, and while I was looking into the company, one of the milestones that I discovered you accomplished was that you got financing from over 1,000 investors. And one of the things that makes this kind of interview important is the fact that we're able to verify what we see online from you directly. So I want to ask, how did you determine the most suitable financing mix from your investors? Because from theory, we know maybe you have your network before external investors. So how do you determine what percentage goes to your network and the other that comes from external investors?
A lot of it depends on the company phase where it's at the life cycle, basically. And as an example, if you're raising financing, you're not only getting money, you're also getting people on board. You're possibly making some marketing moves and so on. So if you're talking with venture capitalists, for example, it's completely under the table. Nobody will see it or hear about it unless you make some kind of PR announcement and so on. If you go the other route where you go kind of public financing, so there's a lot of these website platforms nowadays where you can do that. They don't work by themselves. You are the one who has to bring people to that platform in the end. So then if you decide to do that, then part of it is you deciding, okay, we want to spend, we have the capability to spend enough marketing money to get people on that platform to actually invest. So it's just a tool to get some money, but at the same time you're marketing. So depending on what kind of product and company you are, different financing models work at different life cycle stages, or at least they're easier in different life cycle stages. They can all work in the same life cycle stage, but it's not always, doesn't make always sense to use all of them. So that's kind of one answer.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I understand that investors want a form of communication from you. So what are the strategies you used to maintain relationship with them, communicate your financial progress to the investors?
That's kind of for startup actually is one of the things where you want to minimize all of that actually in the end. So for example, in our case, all the agreements basically state that you are entitled to getting the yearly numbers, and that's it. Wow. Most of the investors will not even reach out that much. It's the classical 90-10 rule. 90% of the investors you will never hear about, you don't know about them, they don't exist there. Then maybe the 10%, 5%, whatever you might hear about, they might send you questions. Some of them might be good, some of them might be bad, and so on. Of course, if you have a large number of people, it all becomes a bit more kind of harder, because then there's always going to be a lot more people who want to talk or want to ask or something. At the same time, this goes back to your previous question, is investors should not be about money only. They should be about experience and other things. So you also want to make sure that you can get their information, their knowledge into the company in the best way possible. So while we wanted to minimize the kind of amount of official information we need to give just to keep the workload low for us, we also at the same time wanted to identify the people who are actually interesting for us because of their background, because of their companies, because of whatever, and then make sure that we're talking with them as much as possible. Of course, there is a ton of people always, so it's not always possible to speak with all people, but at the same time, especially if you're looking at year, you want to identify some of the more interesting people.
Wow, okay. I think one of the things I took away from that is the fact that investors do not always have to be about money. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that insight.
And
So
actually, they should not be about money. Like that's the last thing you want from an investor in the end, because there is good money and bad money. There can be investors who introduce so much bullshit into the game that then you're fighting the investors, and you don't want that. So that's why actually, when you're dealing with investors, people first, money second is a good rule. Of course, the better company you have, the easier it's to follow that. The harder, or the worse the company is doing, the harder it's to follow that. So in a way, it's one of those things where it's easy to say this is how you should do, but when the real life hits you, it's not always easy to follow it. But this is something to kind of really keep in mind if you ever deal with the investors.
okay, thank you. So while we are studying for this course, one of the things we explored was how to choose co-founders. And in our research, we discovered that the co-founders have complementary skills. Because I want to talk about marketing now. So I'm thinking, what was your strength? And did you consider that when you were bringing on board your co-founder?
Yeah, in our case, the co-founders kind of came together quite naturally. We didn't try to find anyone. Me and Aki were the kind of first people who started it, and we just happened to have quite a different talents in the end. We didn't, in the end, or in the beginning, we didn't kind of look too much about what our skills are and so on. But at the same time, when the third guy kind of applied to join in a way, that's when we really kind of stopped and sat down for a full day, and we're just talking about future and our wants and needs to make sure that we align. Because for a startup, there can be a lot of fluff in the air, and some people might want some other parts and so on. And if those soft values are not aligned, then you can easily end up in a bad situation. So in a way, while we in the beginning didn't kind of look for the different capabilities, we ended up with a team who had different capabilities. But the more important part was the talk we had about the kind of what do we expect from the next year, 5 years, 10 years? Are we full on about going like on the venture capital track? Because that, for example, is quite a big sacrifice, and it's a very different thing if you are working with people who are okay with going in a full growth mode, or if you want someone who wants a stable work for the next 30 years, because both are fine. It's more about finding the right kind of people, because there are very different kind of companies. Some companies don't want to grow at all. They just want to stay profitable, make some money to the owners, and that's completely fine. Even actually healthier than, for example, growth options. So in a way, when you're starting the company, you just have to understand who are the people you're working with, what do they actually want. And especially, let's say you have engineers in the company, for example. Engineers don't like to talk about soft stuff. So you really have to kind of stop and talk and try to find what makes sense.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, considering the fact that Nava's products are very niched, how did you identify your target customers and the needs of the customers back then when you started?
Well, in the beginning, it was really, really simple. We just took the cost, added some margins, and put the price as high as we dared, and went to customer to sell it. And 3 first customers bought 25 products on the first meeting. So we weren't that far off from a reasonable pricing. So this goes to one of those where, as a startup, you can try to do a certain amount of research, but when you're a completely new product, you just have to go talk to the customer and figure out something and see what sticks and what makes sense. Because you can still change things after that, but at least you kind of get an idea how the customer reacts to the price points and so on.
So you know that from what we've learned, Nava's product is like an innovation, and probably there were existing competitors in the market at that time. So how did you differentiate your product with the innovation that it's bringing from those that were existing in the marketplace back then?
We didn't have any direct competition back then. So up until today, we don't have, or Nava doesn't have any direct competition. There is, like in the beginning when Nava started, the product was sold purely for indoor air purification naturally. And even today, there's not a clear competition for that. There is of course green walls, there's air purifiers and so on, but at the same time there's nothing that nobody did at that point. And a lot of our early sales work was proving ourselves, so we would show the customer how much better we are. And in the simplest form, this was basically going to customers, finding when they had problems, and then bringing our products for a month or two and showing how the problems went away. And then customers would at that point be happy, because in some cases they might have been fighting with the issues for years, paid tens of thousands of euros, and not being able to kind of fix the problems. And then when you come and can show that you're actually doing a better job than anyone else, well, the price at that point doesn't matter as much. Of course, nowadays Nava has transferred a bit more to kind of office greenery side, and there you have a lot of direct competition, and then the market is a lot kind of simpler as well. You can easily see the pricing and so on. But in the beginning days, it was a really, really different approach.
Okay, so now with competitions coming on board, I want to ask, because I discovered that from the start, it seems like word of mouth marketing from the customers you successfully onboarded worked for you. So as you grew in the business, what are the marketing channels you used, and why did you choose them to use them?
I think we tested pretty much every single marketing channel there is, other than TV but and radio. But outside of those two channels, we tried pretty much everything. And it's more of a question of what's your sales angle, because every different, if you look at social media, for example, every platform is different. So your sales method or marketing method has a bit different basically on every channel. Same thing. Okay, you go to an expo, for example, it works for a certain customer group. Of course, you have the traditional sales guys who just go door to door knocking and trying to find customers and so on. And it's also a form of marketing in the end, because the customer hasn't heard about you. They are actually hearing from the sales guy first time. So in the end, you just have to kind of test on what makes sense. And for something like Nava, it's a massive headache to find a good marketing channel, because it's not a product that companies can easily buy or will easily buy, or a single person within a company would easily buy, because it's almost always you have to have 3 to 4 to 5 different people talking about it and agreeing to buy it. And that's why the marketing and sales for that kind of product is extremely hard. You can do it in different ways, but finding a single channel that works, I don't think that's possible.
Okay, so I know you have said there's no one single channel that worked, but I'm actually just curious. So in the course of time, was there a particular marketing campaign that boosted the growth of the company, that you knew that this campaign made a huge impact in the lifetime of the company?
I think in the end, this kind of traditional PR was actually the most efficient, funnily enough, because if you can go to a customer meeting and they've just seen you on Helsingin Sanomat front page or whatever, and in our case, we never bought ads. We just happened to have a very interesting company, so people made news articles about us. So when you had these happen and you were able to go to the customer meeting and sell, these were kind of that helped us, because people are kind of weird animals in a way. When we see something in newspapers, we assume it's going to be something validated by someone, and it's like super hard to get there. Nowadays, getting to a newspaper is actually quite cheap and easy, but people still give a really high value for you being in a newspaper or maybe in a TV news or something like that. So these kind of things were actually quite valuable for us in the end, and they were not strictly marketing campaigns always. They were just something that happened, and we got PR out of it. So I would say for us, that was kind of one of the bigger ways to kind of make sales easier.
Okay. So I know I've taken time from my colleagues. So I just have one more question, and this is to talk about your growth strategy. But I'll ask one question in 2 ways. The first one is, how did you identify these growth strategies? Then how did you prioritize them to know that this should come first, second, and third? Thank you.
Well, the traditional kind of try something quickly and fail fast is really good way for that, because most of those you can try in some way. in a real simple way and see kind of how it works. And then you can hopefully fail fast if it doesn't work, when it doesn't work, and then you can kind of continue on the next one. And at some point you will come up with something that actually works and makes sense, because really rarely, like, it's easy to talk afterwards and make it sound like it's a super big and nice strategy. But when you're actually in the beginning just trying to make it happen, it's not something too big. It's more of a like, okay, do we go to this expo or not, or do we do this kind of social media marketing or not? Like, what do we do? What do we test? How do we sell? Like, as an example, we had this sales strategy where we basically in the beginning gave products for customers for a full year, and we asked them to pay first 50% on delivery and the other 50% if they're happy after a year. And we just took a huge gamble, but we knew that if we want to sell a lot and at the same time we trusted in the product, so we just gave them this option. So these kind of things you just have to test, but they don't of course work for every single time of or the life cycle of the company.
Okay, I understand that. Thank you very much for your time. So let me just leave the room for my classmates to continue. Thank you. Sia?
Yeah. Okay, so I have a couple of questions on entrepreneur ecosystem. So first of all, have the regulatory environment or any government policies affected your venture?
The main thing actually was when Nokia fell in Jyväskylä, the city of Jyväskylä came up with Protomo, which was this kind of entrepreneurial community where you were able to get some funding and brought people together. And that's actually where we met with Aki, who was my co-founder. And that's also where we got the first 5,000 euros to build something and just test and so on. So that was actually, I would say, the single biggest help. Outside of that, of course, regulatory environment is always interesting, but things are just getting harder to do, basically. Like if you're talking about electrical products, they are getting like more and more regulated. We're going fancier and fancier products, so you have more and more regulations in that sense. So kind of you just have a lot more work to do every single time you're doing anything nowadays. Just launch a website, well, then you have to have certain regulatory stuff done for a basic website and so on. So I would say most of that stuff hasn't helped. It's just slowing down. And the government, or the sources for government money in Finland are drawing up a bit as well, I would say. I would say in the beginning it was a lot easier to get. Now it's quite different to get. I mean, still for good companies you can get the money, but it's a lot harder and comes with a slightly more regulations as well.
Okay. Then if thinking about future, what changes or improvements do you think that could benefit entrepreneurs like yourself?
Well, there's a reason I'm living in Latvia right now. Let's put it that way. In Finland, the whole kind of how Finnish people think and act, and how the government thinks and acts, it's kind of getting over-regulated in a way, and a bit crazy. Just funny examples from news. If anyone has been following this old lady who has now been banned from baking buns for old people in the old people home because it's not food safe anymore, and stuff like this. It's just like, why are you spending time with that? And the same thing kind of is visible in the higher level in companies and so on as well. I mean, some of the regulation makes sense, yes, but not all of it. And we should be focusing more on growth and actually doing something and focusing on the customer. In my current role, for example, it's so easy because we're building a pilot site factory. It takes a year. So it's super easy to forget that, hey, there's customer somewhere in the end. You actually have to build it for customer. It's so easy to kind of focus on the daily issues that you have and improve your own life. But if you don't remember the customer and how you actually can provide a product that they want, then you can have a problem. And this is the reason, for example, why I personally end up buying a lot of times IT products outside of Finland, because the Finnish IT companies don't prioritize customers. They prioritize their kind of how it's easy for them or whatever else, but you can feel it that it's not made for you often. So this is something that's kind of quite important.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any more questions?
Yes, I just wanted to ask what you can say were the high and low of your business in the number groups. What were the main highs and lows throughout your journey?
Quite massive. I mean, lows were, of course, as I said, delivering first products and having a customer call after a week or two that they're all dead, and then having to drive 3 hours one way to start fixing the issues, and just having the kind of nightmare of hearing the customer be not so happy, and then of course getting the local newspaper and all that fun stuff. So kind of starting from there, of course, with the financing, we had a lot of monetary issues, lows and highs there as well. Anywhere from, hey, we don't have money for the next week anymore, to, okay, now we have a few million, but what do we do for the next year, and anything between. So it's just constant roller coaster of highs and lows, and just have to try to remember the good ones, because the bad ones will usually stay in your head longer than the good ones.
And you faced any certain kind of like your product was a new product that wasn't introduced in the market before. So at the start, what were different difficulties for you to face, like to familiarize people with your product and to convince them to buy it?
Yeah, that's why we, as I mentioned, we ended up giving the product or kind of renting the product or whatever for a certain amount of times for some customers, so they were able to test it and experience it. Because with that product, for example, no amount of scientific tests were ever enough. We did a lot of them. We did maybe too much of them in the beginning. But the best way in the end was just to give the product to the customer, ask them in a month, how do you feel? And in the really early stage, we literally had product in our car or in the van, and we brought it for every single customer meeting. And I mean, the product weighs like what, 70-80 kilos, and it takes half an hour to get it to a third floor. So going to a sales meeting and doing that kind of work, it's not for the sane people, but that was one way for us to make sure the customers can experience it really fast. And we had situations where customers told that, hey, when we took the product away after the meeting, that, hey, please bring it back. Like they were able to sense the difference within an hour in the space. And of course, that kind of thing makes sales easier in the end. But good luck hiring a sales guy who's willing to lug around like 60-70 kilo of product and showing it and so on. And it doesn't fit in an elevator, so you have to carry it up the stairs and all that stuff. So, I mean, again, that's part of when you're setting up a company, you can do that, but there's no way you can build a company based on that. You can hire people who will also be willing to do the same nowadays.
Thank you so much. Anyone else has a question? Sophia, if you want to ask something.
Yeah, maybe I would ask something like this about mistakes. If you could start your business again, like what you would do differently now when you have this experience about businesses?
I guess the one thing is that the potential is big enough in a way, because if you're starting something completely new, like absolutely new, I mean, then it's super easy to kind of think it's big, but then when you actually start putting in the actual numbers and breaking it down, that's when it can be hard to justify how big it can be. And that's a good thing, because then you can maybe find something even bigger opportunity wise, because in the end your target will have 100 million, $1 billion market, but how much actually you can take off the market in the end. And if you have a completely new product, the market will most likely be a lot smaller in the early time than you expect, which is the kind of surprise often. So kind of from mistakes, in a way, that was one of our surprises, is how hard is it to push completely new product in a marketplace, because it takes a lot of effort, and especially going outside of Finland, for example, it's not so simple with completely new product. Whereas if you're just selling, let's say, IT product or something that exists already, but you have a better product, it's a lot easier to sell because there's already market existing. You have customers who are used to buying it. Other question you can ask is there a customer who has bought the same kind of product before? And does customer have a process for buying this kind of product? And if you're talking about an indoor air cleaning green wall, well, you know that not a single customer has ever bought anything like that. So then you have a problem. But if you're selling any kind of product that already has a market which is identifiable, it's a lot easier to sell. So in that sense, competition is actually a really nice thing many times, because then the sales process becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Nico. What I want to ask is, so reading about Nava and the milestones, I discovered, obviously, you sell internationally. Did you get any form of surprise when you started installing Nava outside Finland, say, in South Korea, and other countries?
So many surprises. It's just the whole whole new world out there. I mean, cultures are different. You guys are from different cultures, so you can understand possibly if you take a simple question of I don't know, how do you go to sleep? How do you take a shower? If you just start talking together, everyone will have a different cultural preference to do something. And the same way in the workplace, everything works in the end quite differently in many cultures. It's super easy to say that. It's completely different way to actually understand that in a deep level. And well, I was personally setting up the company in the US for 3 years. I lived there. I set up the company, I hired all the people and so on. So I kind of got to experience how different it is there. South Korea, I was there for a while, but not that long. And it was our not our own company, but rather a partner. So we didn't have to go that deep. But at the same time, through the partner, we learned how the I would say almost Asian market is different in the expectation of quality and the expectation of service compared to Europe and US. The Asia is a lot tougher in a way. And if you, as a fun reading, for example, find any kind of book about Toyota and their service levels and quality in the actual sales side, not the Toyota production, which is its own story, but if you just focus on the actual after sales, how it works for a Finnish people, for example, it sounds crazy, the level of quality you get from the service guys in there. And all of these are things that, like with the Nava, for example, well, it's a living product, and we provided the service as well. So we got to experience all the fun things about all the different kind of cultural things, and it was quite hard to actually go through all of those and try to grow and learn at the same time, because there was a lot of things to do.
Wow. Okay. Curiosity wants me to ask this final question to you now. So, reading about you, I know your strength is in biology or technology. So, at what point are you able to say this product is a product somebody will be willing to pay for? So, at what point do you think that biotech idea becomes a product that someone will pay for? Thank you.
Well, nowadays I have kind of a slightly negative view towards people, and if you assume that people are stupid and lazy and they don't have money, and if you still can sell them, then you're usually in a kind of good space, because the newer the product is, the harder it is to push through with a small budget. Like if you think about ChatGPT and stuff like that, I mean, things like that existed for a long time. Like I'm a nerd, and I've been kind of looking at that stuff. It's not new. What did ChatGPT do better? Okay, they had slightly better product, but they had a massive marketing campaign, massive budget to be able to push through. So in a way, you see things like that, and you don't necessarily understand the actual difference between other products before. So that's why it's like, if you're talking about biotech products, for example, is there a market for it already? Because if you're incremental improvement, that almost for sure will sell better. If you have something completely new, well, you better have a massive budget or get lucky with the PR and marketing. Of course, it helps if it's something that people can immediately take and test. The smaller it is, the easier it will be. The bigger it is, the harder it will be to sell. If you have to ship it with heated up freight so the plants don't die in the winter, and if it's going to be the size of a couch and whatever, I guarantee it's going to be a problem. So in a way, the smaller the product, easier to kind of deliver, the faster to deliver, the shorter the point from I want it to I have it, the better. So if you look at like how people in the US buy, like what's the level of commitment from Amazon and so on and so on. It's just like the products that sell well are the ones that you can get today, right now, easily. And if you can get something like that, usually that's a really good sign. Anything outside of that, you might still be able to sell, but it will be slower.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. That'll be all from my end.
Thank you so much for your time. And it was a great session, very informative. And thank you so much again for answering our questions. And if anyone else have something to say, they can say.
So let me go. I would say that, when you are saying some things, and I could relate it to where I'm from in Nigeria, where you talked about cultures and where you talk about like the sales cycle with people. And, one of the things that was surprising for me when I was reading your story was about the funding you get and how you communicate with investors. In Nigeria, most of the investors, they want monthly updates because they've committed their resources to you. So they want you to talk to them every month. If an investor calls you and you did not pick his call, you might see him in the office the next day. It can be as crazy as that. So I understand how this is a privilege to even have this conversation with you. And I was writing while you were talking. So there's a way I'm able to blend what we've learned in class with many of the things you have explained. And, practicality supersedes theory. So talking to you has been a wonderful experience. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, everybody. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to email me or anything. I'm leaving for vacation on Thursday, so might be a small delay with answering. Once I get the recording, I'll forward it to you guys. I don't think it automatically sends it out to you, but I'll send the file to you guys so you can give it to the teacher.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Oh, and
The video recording. Sorry, the recording. So we'd like to get the link up to the recording as soon
Yeah,
as it's
I will
available.
share it immediately after this once it finishes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.